Reich Chancellor Müller's government resigns. Dr. Heinrich Brüning forms a new coalition, saying the forces must move. Democracy is at a standstill, and any attempt to continue the failed tax laws with the help of Article 48 will be met with fierce and resolute opposition from the right. This is the rise of Hitler. As always, people of all political stripes welcome times of uncertainty and political change. So it's no surprise that Nazis and Communists are still on the rise. They were among the harshest critics of the previous Grand Coalition, and now, with it ending, they see themselves vindicated. On World Unemployment Day, Communists take to the streets around the world. In Germany, hunger marches were met with police violence. In a surprise attack on the Reichstag, 50 Nazis opened fire on a restaurant in a small town near Berlin. The protest march was against the British salt monopoly. The president of the Reichsbank, Hjalmar Schacht, resigned in protest against the Young Plan. In the United States, unemployment reached 20%, and the economy was on the verge of collapse. The German Democrats moved into opposition. However, the Young Plan was adopted. The law for the protection of the Republic was passed in the Reichstag, despite growing calls for the violent overthrow of the government. Among those making these calls were the Communists. The German economy may be on the verge of a deeper recession. This development is not unique to Germany. Many other economies are still experiencing economic difficulties. There are some positive indicators, such as a decline in the number of unemployed and those receiving unemployment benefits. But the economy as a whole continues to suffer. In this tense atmosphere, the Communists feel the need to express their discontent. On March 6th, the International Day of Action for the Unemployed and Factory Workers, the proletariat of all capitalist countries rose up against the criminal justifications, against the impoverishment of millions of workers, their wives and children, and fought against the bourgeois system of starvation and social fascism. For the revolutionary victory of the German proletariat, for Soviet Germany. Ignoring the ban on communist demonstrations, Communists took to the streets throughout Weimar, Berlin, Munich, Frankfurt, Cologne, and elsewhere. However, because the protest had been planned and announced long before, the police were ready and waiting. From Berlin, the Communists proudly announced, "The police had to fight with all their might until, after hours of hand-to-hand combat, they succeeded in occupying the employment office in Berlin Mitte." In some cases, when the police are said to be brutally confronting demonstrators, they have no choice but to use force. One newspaper reported that a procession of about 150 Communists was advancing when a police car appeared at a street corner. The officers immediately jumped out of the car and tried to disperse the demonstrators with rubber truncheons. They were initially successful, but the demonstrators regrouped and attacked the police. They knocked down 2 officers and, according to eyewitnesses, at the crucial moment, the police fired several shots. As a result, 6 civilians were seriously wounded by gunfire. Some police officers were also seriously injured, though none were fatal. By the end of the day, the demonstrators had reached the government district in the heart of Berlin, another victory. The police press proudly announced that the city centre, and especially the government district, would be sealed off. Suddenly, thousands emerged, as if from underground, and surged toward Unter den Linden. Yesterday proved conclusively that the Communists can no longer be kept off the streets. The newspaper says that reports from the Reich regarding the Communist initiatives indicate that their marches on the whole failed in Frankfurt, Breslau, Cologne and the Ruhr area. Thursday passed peacefully. The Communists' attempts failed in any case, whether it was a glorious victory for the proletariat or a general failure. The Nazis addressed harsh words to the March 6 agitators. The Communists were insulted. You usually attack the Nazis, red scum, communist criminals, savage rabble, path of crime, monsters, scum of the rabble, corruption of entrepreneurship, cry of inhuman hatred, and in short, the Communists must be crushed to the core. The Communists responded tersely. Crush them to the core? Of course, the Nazis also do not limit themselves to peaceful protests, although there have been some incidents of planned violence. On March 5th, in the small town of Röntgental, near Berlin, two groups met in the town tavern. One was a tenants' association that discussed rent and gossip, and the other was the Reichsbanner. The Reichsbanner is a political organization that aims to protect the Democratic Republic. It was founded in 1924 by members of the Social Democratic Party, Christian Conservatives and German Democrats. They want to defend Germany and its values of unity, justice and freedom. It is not just a political organization, it also has a militia. According to Reichsbanner officials, this was a direct response to the Nazi militia, the SA, and its terror on the streets of Germany. However, around 10:30 p.m., the situation suddenly exploded. The country witnessed a bloody attack by Nazi thugs on a tenants' association meeting, believing they were attacking a local branch of the Reichsbanner. Heavy gunfire ensued, and several people were injured, some of whom were hit by banned dum-dum bullets, and one later died of his wounds. The police did not intervene effectively. One officer even fled the scene, raising suspicions that some of them sympathized with the Nazis. The Communists responded angrily, viewing the incident as a symbol of proletariat unity against fascism and a call to establish an anti-Nazi revolutionary front. The Nazis, however, denied any responsibility, accusing the Jewish press of fabricating the story. This attack marked a turning point in the escalation of political violence between factions and exposed the state's weakness in the face of party militias. That same month, the country was rocked by a major economic event, the resignation of the president of the German Federal Bank, Hjalmar Schacht, in protest against the Young Plan for War Reparations. His resignation sparked widespread controversy. The left viewed it as a betrayal of national responsibility. The centre described him as a strong leader who unwittingly encouraged extremists, and the Nazis celebrated it as evidence of the failure of the democratic system. Thus, March 1930 combined street violence with an economic and political crisis, in a scene that directly paved the way for the Nazi rise to power. The country witnessed a bloody attack by Nazi thugs on a tenants' association meeting, believing they were attacking a local branch of the Reichsbanner. Nevertheless, the Reichstag approved the Young Plan on March 13th by a majority of 295 to 192, following political manoeuvring, alliances and party splits that angered nationalists, Nazis and communists alike. The nationalists and Nazis viewed the approval as a national betrayal, while the communists saw it as a new decade of financial slavery calling for armed revolutionary struggle. Some viewed the plan's approval as a repetition of a previous tragedy compared to the Kapp-Putsch attempt 10 years earlier, but most saw it as an attempt to restore stability and prevent chaos. Conversely, the developments prompted Interior Minister Karl Seffring to accelerate the expansion of state powers. The Reich Protection Law was revised and entered into force on March 14th as a tool to combat political violence and ban hostile organizations. The result was that the approval of the Young Plan deepened the divisions in the political arena, intensifying the polarization between right and left, while extremist calls from communists for armed revolution and from nationalists for outright rejection continued, placing the Weimar Republic before a profound existential test: maintaining order or collapsing into violence and tyranny. Tensions then escalate between the government, the communist left, and the far right. Some politicians call for a forceful confrontation with the communists through the law for the protection of the Republic, aimed at curbing incitement and violence. Meanwhile, extremist newspapers adopt revolutionary language, calling on people to take to the streets and resist the criminal regime. In Parliament, one deputy ridicules accusations of a Nazi coup attempt, asserting that the National Socialists seek spiritual change, but others warn that this spiritual struggle is being waged with bombs and violence. The government, caught between threats from the right and the left, demands more protection and succeeds in passing the Young Economic Plan and the law for the protection of the Republic. Nevertheless, the financial crisis persists. The unemployment insurance system faces a deficit of nearly 100 million marks, with the number of unemployed rising to around 2.7 million, exceeding its stated capacity. The two parties in the ruling coalition disagree on a solution, with the Social Democratic Party, SPD, calling for an increase in insurance premiums to cover the deficit, while its partners reject this, deepening the rift within the Weimar government and threatening a new crisis. In late March 1930, the Weimar government's crisis reached a climax when negotiations between the parties over financial reform, particularly unemployment insurance, failed. Chancellor Hermann Müller sought to cut services and reduce spending, but opposition from his Social Democratic Party, SPD, prevented any compromise. On the evening of March 27th, Müller announced his resignation after no agreement was reached, ending the last stable coalition government of the Weimar Republic. President Paul von Hindenburg, in consultation with General Kurt von Schleicher, selected Heinrich Brüning, a conservative politician from the Catholic Centre Party, to form a new government. However, this government was not built on a coalition basis, but on direct presidential support, with the Social Democrats relegated to the opposition. It was clear that Hindenburg had given Brüning an implicit promise to invoke the powers of Article 48 of the Weimar Constitution, which allows the president to take exceptional measures, including suspending fundamental rights when public order is threatened. These powers made the president a kind of substitute for the emperor, granting him the ability to rule the country by emergency decrees without consulting Parliament. By the end of the month, the future of the new government and the way Germany would be governed remained uncertain. Will Brüning be able to muster a majority in the Reichstag? Or will Hindenburg resort to extraordinary rule by decree? Will the street clashes between communists and Nazis lead to further violence? And could the new law for the protection of the Republic halt this political collapse?